everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of On the Rocks with Roxana Moran, President of the American College of Cardiology. I'm so delighted to be joined today by my very special guest, Dr. Harlan Krumholtz. He's the editor-in-chief of the Journal of American College of Cardiology, or JACC, a flagship scientific journal. For me, as from the time of the very, very first time in my fellowship, I remember even before my fellowship in my residency with Arnold Katz as my UConn chief of cardiology when I was doing my internal medicine residency. JACC was the journal he would refer to. He would grab articles. He would teach us internal medicine residents. And I absolutely, in my mind, it's always been the go-to source of the latest in cardiovascular science from around the world. I think I'm not alone. I believe the entire world feels that way in who's a cardiologist. What JACC has done and continues to do is bringing groundbreaking research, clinical guidelines, and also additional guidance and scientific documents and expert perspectives that helps us translate evidence into practice. And there is no time better than now to actually translate the work we do in clinical trials onto clinical practice and actually have it be implemented. JACC does that, gives us that bridge from science to clinical to clinicians to the bedside. It's also a journal with a remarkable legacy. JACC's very first editor-in-chief, Dr. Simon Datt, came from my institution. He was the last person from Mount Sinai who served as president of the American College of Cardiology 70 years ago. But extraordinary leaders like Bill Parmley, Anthony DeMaria, Valentin Fuster, and now the very best, someone I've looked up to from very, very early on in my career, who actually made me want to do clinical trials and outcomes work. Dr. Harlan Krumholtz, professor of medicine at Yale, editor-in-chief of JACC. And these editors have elevated the journal, adapting to the changing times, technologies, and evolving needs for clinicians everywhere. So welcome to the program.
Thank you, Roxana.
Can I call you Harlan? Is that all right?
Come on. Far too kind. Now I've discovered that somehow we let you escape from Connecticut. How could we possibly have done that?
I know. I was at UConn,
we have
just
you in
on
Connecticut.
the road
You're
from
so
you.
close. How did we let you go to New York? I don't know how we did that.
And I remember Arnie Katz telling me all the time, watch out what those boys are doing at Yale. We got to keep up with them. And sure enough, here I am. And Marty was there too. Marty Leon was there too. So it's a crazy place. But you've been now at the journal. I think this is your 2-year anniversary. Am I correct to say?
I'm just ending the second year. Yeah.
I can't even believe it. First of all, you have brought such incredible, total brilliance to the journal, a complete reboot of the way we've been doing things, really working with the changing in times. But what I really want to know from you is, where do you think we are at this very, very important moment in life where we are seeing so much technology, so little attention to written work, and people just want snapshots of this, that, and the other thing, and hence this podcast. But where are we? What's the state of scientific publishing today?
Well, scientific publishing is in the midst of, I think, a substantial change. It's an exciting moment. The technology is enabling a whole range of different strategies and approaches. It's also imposing certain challenges. I think it starts with our community. Look, it's never been a more exciting time to be a cardiologist, never been a more exciting time to be a doctor. For all the kind of woes that people complain about, we're in a moment where we've never been able to do more for patients. The speed of discovery has never been faster. The advances in the life sciences are breathtaking. The movement from those life sciences innovations to products and drugs, devices, strategies is moving afoot, and the need for careful evaluation, for clinical research to help us guide us in choices, help us inform our patients, help make people make the right decisions. That the premium on that is never been higher either. And then, this full translation side. And so, the medicine's going to be different going forward than it has been in the past in ways that, I think are hard to imagine. We've been practicing medicine more or less the same kind of way for a long time, maybe for like the last 40 or 50 years. But we're about to see a real sea change. And then, enter the journals. You're asking me about medical publishing. Let me just talk about the journals. A really good journal is something that is able to reach across our entire community, to be, credible, trustworthy, independent, a voice for patients, a voice for the community, a voice for the profession, and not to dictate, not to, adjudicate what's right and what's wrong, but to foster the kind of dialogue we need to make the kind of progress that's necessary, and to help us make the kind of progress that net will be beneficial for our patients. Because when there's change, there's always the possibility that there'll be unintended adverse consequences, that we move in the wrong direction, that we actually lose some of what's really precious about our field. And so, the journals have a key role to play. The very best journals, I think, will see themselves not just pushing through papers, but helping to strengthen the community, helping to strengthen the dialogue. And then medical publishing is a whole different animal. I can talk to you about that. I think that there are issues about the way that it has evolved, that, massive multinational conglomerates running publishing, making enormous profits, and whether they're really serving the needs of the community. I mean, there's a discussion to be had there. Information behind firewalls as a means to monetize what's going on. Can we move to a different model? What is it that we're trying to achieve together? I think that it's a time for a conversation about the way that we have approached publishing. But the journals themselves can stand as a core, weight-bearing beam that's holding up, a lot of what is important and helping to foster the kind of dialogue that's critical. And I believe that they have an important role to play.
Oh, there's no question. And I think thinking about this environment, I imagine you're thinking about your vision. I'm not thinking about it, but I know that you came in with a very, very big vision for JACC. But given the current environment, as you dived into the deep end of the pool 2 years ago, what is your vision for JACC?
Well, I think, there's a bit of a story in this. I've worked for a long time at how do we increase and improve the integrity of our approach to research? How do we ensure that the research is done actually reaches patients? How do we elevate the level of communication and dialogue that goes on around science? And then, I had the opportunity to be the founding editor of Circulation, Quality of Care and Outcomes at the AHA, and see what it was like to try to start a journal, to get it going. I did that for 8 years. And when I left, I was kind of frustrated, with some of the constraints on medical publishing and what journals could do.
What specifically do you mean by that? Like, what really frustrated you?
Well, and some of this came from my experience as an author. I thought the journals were too slow, or too impersonal, were too expensive, were too rigid, were too hierarchical. I thought that they were often dismissive and disparaging. I was someone who had successfully navigated, academia, had published a lot of papers. Anyone who's published a lot of papers, by the way, has got a lot of rejections. It wasn't that the rejections that bothered me, but it was the tone, the approach, and the idea that journals had a certain infallibility to them. I would see issues that, were very hard to raise. And I also saw a certain, to be honest, vindictiveness among some of the editors, that if you questioned their authority, if you questioned their preeminence, then you risked in the kind of discretionary decisions that were being made at the level of the journals being pushed to the outside. And so, it was that in some ways, that's what led me to co-found medRxiv, a preprint server, to say, well, maybe there are other ways that we can get medical research and science out and crowdsource reviews and enable people to have access to information and to foster, a different kind of environment. I didn't immediately apply for the JACC job because I thought that maybe some of my ideas were a little too radical for, the future of medical journals, that I thought we needed to work hard to kind of, change up the way that they were configured and what their real mission was. That their mission, I think JACC's mission is firmly to advance global cardiovascular health. Our mission is not to publish 200 papers a year or 220 original research papers a year. That's what we do. We need to do that really well. We need to do that building community and reaching out to authors and being respectful and trying to strengthen, the enterprise. But our real goal is to play a considerable role in using this platform to be a force for good, to strengthen those around us, to help lift up the people who are coming up, and to look out for patients and to ensure the integrity of what's going on with regard to seeing research
So
translate into practice.
tell us how you've done that in the last 2 years and what are you most proud of? How have you done this now?
Well,
How have you instituted these ideas now in JACC?
Well, it was sort of like at the beginning, it was the mechanics, how can we take this on one by one? I mean, for one, I populated an editorial team that was younger than what people had normally seen before. And that was because I wanted to mentor. I thought that, the skills of an editor can be learned. It's not the same thing as the skills of a seasoned, scientists more toward the end of their career, that young people are full of ideas and creativity, and that we could train a group of really talented individuals who would be future leaders. I wanted to create a cradle of coaches, that idea that people who had worked with us grew and would be the future leaders of our profession and could be positioned that way, and yet still could be incisive and talented editors and do a great job. I made a commitment to say that we should value time, that we should be thinking all the time about how do we value the time of our authors, of our reviewers, of our editors, of our readers, so that, can we turn around submissions thoughtfully, wisely, but rapidly, not waste any time. If the science is important, it should move quickly. So could we render decisions with speed and wisdom, with all due speed, that we could do that in a way that would help authors to move their piece around. We've all had the experience of submissions that languished even for months, before we got decisions. And even those decisions sometimes weren't favorable, even though they'd been sitting for a long time. I wanted to create a way that you didn't have to format for us. Like what I hated was that we would spend hours reformatting our papers so we could submit them to a different journal who had different rules. There was no harmonization of standards across the journals. So you'd spend wasted time just fixing references for the, preferences of a particular journal. I said, don't worry about that. Submit it. If it progresses, then let's worry about formatting at the end of the process, not the beginning. I don't want authors wasting time. Same with
So
reviewers.
don't you think AI is doing some of that now for everybody?
Well, it is for some people, but why do it? Like as a editor, I don't spend 10 minutes looking at whether your references
Absolutely.
are formatted according
I know.
to my
So true.
taste. I mean, I'm looking at the substance of what you've submitted, so I don't want you even spending 5 minutes, even with an AI program, worrying about that. Just submit it in any form, and let us take a look, and we'll give you feedback. If it progresses.
Harlan, when I'm hearing from everyone that JACC feels different and it feels good and that you've had a really positive impact. But the big thing I want to know from you, if of all the things you have done in the last 2 years, what are you most proud of in JACC?
The culture. I would say, for one thing, let me just say, I think the first 2 years are prelude to what we are going to accomplish. And the first 2 years were about establishing credibility, making sure that we did the fundamentals really well. But the most important thing to me in the beginning was establishing a culture that we actually care. Now, it's a very interesting position that we're in. We have to say no, 19 times out of 20. You know, and I can tell you as an author, no's never great. You know, you're in love with your papers. You think that you know, you've spent a lot of time on them. You feel that you can evaluate it pretty well, and no's always a disappointment. You know, but you never send it in thinking it's going to be a no. And we're in a position we've got to say no quite a lot. And you know, so can we do it empathetically? Can we do it with respect? Can we demonstrate to people that we care and that we're doing our best? And we're not perfect, we're not infallible, and but we want to be of the community, you know. And by the way, also with reviewers, can we say thank you a lot? Can we show appreciation for consultants, for everyone who's contributing to making it great? This isn't about me. It's not even just about the editorial team or the staff, all who are stellar. There's a community that surrounds any great journal. And that community, you know, there needs to be personal touch. You know, when we try to get reviewers, our team sends out personal notes, says, you know, thanks, you know, or we're interested in your opinion. You're not just a widget. You're not just checking a box that we need 2 reviewers, any 2 reviewers, so we can finish this. We're interested in you. And when people give us reviews, we try to say thank you. And, you know, that culture of saying we're
Yeah,
not
no,
above
I'm
you.
proud of your culture too. And I'll tell you what I'm really proud of. I love that whenever you have a JACC gathering, I see people from all over the world so engaged, so enthusiastic about the journal when they come together, and you are so welcoming to everyone from around the world. It's truly a global journal with a lot of impact across the globe, which is so in line with how I think as president, and what ACC at large is focused on, is the global impact on reducing the burden of cardiovascular disease and transforming cardiovascular care. That's sort of our mission statement, but you always want to see it in action. You just don't want to see it in words. You want to see it in action.
One of the things we're trying to do is get people excited about the profession, get people excited about, you know, what we are all doing together. And by the way, we're all doing different things, right? I mean, some people are seeing patients most of the time. Some people are doing research most of the time. Some people are balancing that. Some people are in industries. Some people are, you know, people are fulfilling a wide variety of roles. But part of it is to get people to think optimistically about what that future can be, what we can accomplish together. We are in a period of 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 a lack. You know, I've written that piece about the disquieting plateau. We had such amazing gains in cardiovascular mortality for such a long time. We've hit a plateau recently, and I think part of our job is to get people excited about the possibilities. How can we reclaim that
Especially now, right?
progress,
As you said.
especially now? Yeah, and how can we, you know, for young people, you know, when I hear that some people are saying, like, you know, medicine's not a great profession, or they you know, pushing people away from thinking about medicine, I think, like, take a step back. Like, this is a world of possibilities. Like, you know, we are the luckiest people in the world to be able to be in a position of service and to be able to be in a moment of dramatic progress. And it's exciting. It's exciting.
Here we are thinking about some difficult conversation that we are, you know, the impact of publications, unfortunately measured by the impact factor of citations, et cetera, and the world of craziness that's going on in terms of fighting for that impact factor, may be missing the point of the global impact, or the kinds of impact that we really truly want to have. When we started this conversation, you talked about a global impact, but why is it that the impact of journals are measured by this impact factor?
Oh, yeah,
Should we be measuring it a different way?
yeah. I mean, this is interesting. I've spent a lot of my time in measurement, in my career. Like, how do we become more accountable? What should we be looking at? How can measurement help guide us in positive ways, and then avoiding the potential downfalls of flawed measures that can actually create perverse behaviors? The journals are really interesting. It's almost a certain amount of laziness. I mean, Garfield developed this idea of impact factor to help librarians figure out like who they might want to, what journals they might want to subscribe to. And, eventually it turned it into a company. It was eventually bought by Thomson Reuters right now. Clarivate, runs it. And it's a kind of opaque process. I mean, in a large sense, it's how many citations does an article generate, but it's not in the year it's published. It's in the next year. It's for a 2-year cycle, but it's not all journals. It's some journals that count, and you really never know until the impact factor comes out exactly what a journal is going to have. And the way that they count things that go into the numerator and what goes into the denominator pushes journal editors to chase the numbers. And rather than having a balanced scorecard to say, let's try to understand what's going on in a particular journal. How do their original research articles do, for example, and have a database that anyone can access, anyone could use, anyone can analyze, and then have the production of metrics that everyone agrees is a good reflection. We kind of inherited a system that is pushing journals to produce things like, statistical abstracts or clinical practice guidelines or guidelines themselves that attract thousands of citations and dwarf the original research. And in cardiology, at least, become pretty much the whole story about what differentiates journals with regard to at the top of the stack, about what differentiates their performance on the impact factor. And, I don't know, JACC right now is trailing circulation and EHJ largely because of the societal documents. It sort of sounds, I mean, it's hard for me to critique the impact factor now because I'm not critiquing it from a position of strength. I believe no matter what our impact factor was, I'd be suggesting the profession needs to look at more balanced metrics. But I'm in a kind of weakened position to make the critique because some people may see it as sour grapes, and I'd have a different opinion if I was in a different position. If they look at my work over time, I think that they may not feel that way, but it's hard for me right now because, I believe JACC's thriving. I mean, our submissions are way up, our views are way up. The kind of chatter about the journal is quite strong. The quality of our submissions is growing all the time. Competitiveness of the journals, increasing. But the impact factors is worth a conversation, and it's a lagging compared with Circuit's lagging compared to Nature Reviews, which is actually the top cardiology journal, which is what tells you that this metric may not really reflect the journal itself. And that's because that journal is only publishing reviews. And reviews tend to get cited quite frequently, especially in the introductions to articles, even if they're not changing the practice. So I don't know, it's something we have to think hard about. How should journals be measured? What kind of behaviors do certain measures produce? And how do we move forward? But I think for me, I'm just focused squarely on like, what can we do, to achieve our goals? What can we do to strengthen the community and advance global cardiovascular health? How can we be good to authors? How can we serve practicing docs? And then, I've got to pay attention to the impact factor, but I can't let it produce perverse behaviors on behalf of the journal.
Yeah, so that's a very, very important point that you're just bringing up, and I wonder, as you're thinking about and this sort of, I feel like so many are at the end of the day, many of our colleagues choose journals for their impact factor. They send their best work to the journal that has the highest impact factor, because that is how they're measured in their own institutions. Is it time to have some changes to the system, or is this a good metric?
Well, I mean, I think there are a couple dimensions to this. One is how should academics be evaluated, and they really shouldn't be evaluated based on where they publish. They should be evaluated on the strength of their actual work. Sometimes strong work's not appreciated even by the best journals, but it has a big impact. I've often thought for promotion, people should be presenting a portfolio of their work and what it's done. How have they been able to help others? Sometimes someone can create a data set and 1,000 people can use it. And yet that individual is not cited necessarily, but they've had a profound influence on, an entire body of work. Roy Collins, when he helped build the UK Biobank, I mean, his name isn't on the articles that are published out of the UK Biobank. I mean, Rory's in a different state. He's an accomplished and world-renowned researcher, trialist. But I'm just saying, pretend Rory hadn't been Roy Collins, but had been someone else. That person should also have been, knighted for that work. Even though they may not have gotten many publications out of themselves, they helped others. They were enablers. And so there's lots of ways people contribute. And I think on judging an academic, it shouldn't be like how many papers have you published and where they've been published. It should be about the work you've done and the impact it's had. With regard to journals themselves, this I can tell you what's going on at JACC, which is that we are getting strong submissions and we work with authors to make them great. Like when we have papers that we are working with authors on, our goal is singular. How to make this a great paper? How do we work in partnership? How do we deliver something to frontline practicing clinicians and researchers that is useful? And I would put what we've published in the last year up against anybody. I mean, paper by paper, they are stellar. So I don't know the degree to which, I know I've heard, impact factors and influence because some places even pay bonuses based on them. But I can tell you the approach we're taking, which is to work in partnership with the authors and to take promising work, good work that actually could merit publication even on submission, and then work together to make it even better, greater, more impactful, and more meaningful, and more memorable, something that will endure, is working. And I think over the test of time, you'll see that the original research that's published in JACC is going to make a difference. And so when people have an appetite for that, they want to see their work be as good as it can be, fulfill its promise, make a difference, I think they will increasingly gravitate towards editors who want to work with them closely and make that happen. And that'll be reflected in the citations of the original research. Like I said, in the top cardiology journals, those citations are being swamped by guidelines and clinical practice statements. I mean, the American College of Cardiology historically has put out maybe 20 clinical practice statements over the course of a year or two. AHA's put out 75. I mean, and all of those garner many more citations than your average original research paper because they're general. They get cited in introductions. It's not necessarily because they move the field, but because they're convenient citations for introductions. I can't worry about that. What I've got to worry about is that we are publishing the very best science there is. We're having the best reach we can get, and we're influencing practice in positive ways. We're generating dialogue, and we're helping progress occur. And, that's my job. That's what I've got to do. That's what our team does.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely correct. And I think that there's very, very strong science within the ACC in our walls at the Heart House with so many of those registries that live in our home, in our Heart House, and so much more to do. And we can't wait to work closely with you to get the reports from those registries published in JACC and importantly disseminated and hopefully set the world straight in terms of everything that's going on within the walls of ACC. But importantly, I think for you, I want you to you want to invigorate the next generation. You want to move the needle. Your vision is so strong and so precise. 5 years from now, you will be at the journal for 7 years. Where will JACC be then?
Maybe if I get renewed at 5 years. But
Oh, come on. Where will JACC be? Where will JACC be, and where do you want it to be?
I want us to be truth tellers. I want us to be able to have the uncomfortable conversations that challenge our field to do better. I want us to be ever better at curating and organizing information so that it's useful for people at the point of care and at the places where they need it. I want us to work harder on developing derivative content so that, we meet people where they live. We give them the kind of information that they need. You're absolutely right, Roxanne. And we're not in an era where the habits of the doctors are to go back to the original articles as frequently as they were when maybe 20 or 30 years ago. People have access to lots of other streams of information. I want us to be playing an active role as a publisher of some of those streams of information with breadcrumbs back to the original articles that entice people to engage in the literature and understand it and appreciate it and be able to use it. I want us to have strategic partnerships with a wide range of organizations that help us to extend our reach and make sure all around the world, we're able to provide the kind of service that people need and that we're seen as a trusted source of information. We're help to steer the world in that direction. I want us to be a powerful force for those people who are coming up, medical students, residents, fellows, early career individuals who are looking for ways to grow, looking for opportunities to contribute, and want to be part of something that's the best of the profession and feel energized by that. And so, I want us to be a force where we can help steer the arc of history for the profession and as a result, improve the outcomes for our patients. And so, again, we cannot lose, eye on the ball for the fundamentals. We need to be able to do all those fundamentals, handle the incoming, to manage the submissions, to curate, evaluate, publish, the best science. And we need to do that really well. But I think without scope creep, we can begin to really achieve our promise to play a very positive role in the community around the world and to help our profession to make the biggest impact it can.
Well, Harlan, I can't top that any better than what you just did and what you brought to us. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your vision. And thank you for making the jewel of the crown of ACC, which is our beloved JACC journal, shine so brightly across the globe.
And JACC journals. I mean, the 10 journals.
And really, the journals, all of the journals,
just
of course.
To say the ACC
the journals. We didn't talk about the children that you are cultivating. And some of them are doing so well. It's almost incredible. And it's so exciting.
They're all doing extraordinarily well.
Yes.
And ACC should be really proud. When you look across the JACC journals, there's no portfolio of journals that are stronger than what ACC has. And when seen as a whole and the work that these editors are doing, it's also breathtaking. And they're making such an impact on the areas that they're focusing on. And so, it's very much not just JACC, but it's the JACC journals together.
Well, I'm proud of our journal and journals, and I'm proud of the work that ACC is doing in promoting cardiovascular health and improving and enhancing the health of our patients, whether it's through the advocacy that we do, whether it's through our publications with our beloved JACC journals, which you lead with all of the editors who are fantastic, but also through our educational services and so much our registries that keep us on our toes with metrics and quality metrics for procedures and caring for patients, and for all of the different committees that are leading the way to enhance and improve the lives of our patients with cardiovascular disease, and hopefully moving towards preventing it. And I think this is what we're all focused on. And thank you for spending your time. I know you're extremely busy, but thanks for being on the Rocks.
What a pleasure to be with you. What a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, you're like one of my first guests on the Rocks. Now I can start inviting people. I've been waiting for you.
So honored to have you be our president. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. What a fantastic opportunity to talk to one of the greatest in science. And of course, the one and only Harlan Krumholz.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you, Roxanne.
All right, guys. Bye. Let's see you next time on The Rocks.